We find ourselves in what was the oratory's cellar, a very vast area, always in the basement, in that part of the building that was built in 1860, when Don Bosco managed to buy the Filippi house. Casa Filippi was very close to the Pinardi house, and after a few years of presence in the oratory, Don Bosco needed to expand the spaces. He managed to buy Filippi house too, enlarged it, restructured it, and expanding it, he built a wing that is attached to that of the rooms that had already been built 4 years earlier. Exactly above us, 3 floors above us, is Don Bosco's room. We are exactly under the rooms, the ones we know to be Don Bosco's rooms. The cellar that we found, or rather the room there was, but this had, yes, been restructured over the years, had changed profoundly. It revealed itself to be a very beautiful and very interesting room. Indeed, we can all see the vault of this building. Very simple and without plaster. It was simply given a hand of white lime by a brush to disinfect the environment. Another very particular and beautiful element, removing the pavement that had been made in recent years to give a different use to this place, is the original pavement of the cellar, in terracotta tiles, laid down dry. And then, in the cellar floor, we also found these small holes, or these open pit holes. Obviously, those were the small holes, let's say, used to drain the water from the cleansing barrels, once the barrel had been cleaned and rehabilitated to be ready to welcome the new wine. New wine that was produced in the cellar through the insertion, say, of bunches of grapes of the trapdoors that we find in the ceiling, and that even now, if we want to open, give us a communication between the cellar room and the porch of Pinardi house that we have on the ground floor. It is interesting to see and to know, because the memoirs tell us, that Don Bosco was so poor in the constructions he did that he used pebbles from the river. It was quite common to use them, but he had them brought by the boys saying, "Bring me and bring something to continue building our oratory." And the boys, especially in the Dora, but also in the Stura, the 2 rivers that are near here, went to look for stones. We are on the first floor of the Pinardi house, or better, of the first oratory that Don Bosco built in 1854. At this moment, the renovation works are in demolition phase, so we are pulling away all those superfetations, the pavements, the walls that are not original, and we are returning to the essence of the building. We found the original wooden beams on which a brick attic was built in subsequent years. But the most interesting thing is that there is an attic that is supported by a crossbeam of a tram, and we see it in this place. At that point, one can see how up there is an iron girder, which is not a normal iron girder, that's a beam of a tram of Turin. We do not know how it ended up there, but it allows one to understand the poverty of materials with which Don Bosco worked, and with what he found himself, that he tried to use at best to be able to build. In this second floor of the Pinardi house, in the front part, but also later in the first floor, always on the front part, we will present the figures of Don Bosco's first collaborators, and of these also those who were later proclaimed saints by the Church. In particular, in this section of the second floor, next to the Saint Don Bosco section, there will be his successor, Father Rinaldi. Father Rua will be on the first floor instead. There will be Monsignor Versilia, there will be Father Veriara, everyone, Domenico Savio, Mother Margherita. Indeed, Mother Margherita we commemorate that in this very place where I am at this moment had her own room, and here she died in November 1856. Together with Mother Margherita and the others, in the floor below, we present those who are the first collaborators of Don Bosco, saints or not. In the rooms instead, behind, always on this floor, we will have made what is the tree of the Salesian family. So all the branches that were born from Don Bosco and those that later became recognized in the Salesian charism, in particular highlighting those who are the figures of holiness and who are now recognized by the Church. We are on the floor of the attic of the Pinardi house, floor that was restored about 40 years ago, and so the ceiling and walls are no longer the original ones that were made of wood, but are now in masonry. Very nice, however, it has remained original the small staircase that inside the bell tower of the Church of San Francesco di Sales rises from the basement to the floor of the attic, where it is now, and one can still see the old wooden steps that continue beyond the attic floor and reach up to the bell, which still functions today, of the bell tower of the Church of San Francesco di Sales. In this floor there were the rooms, the small rooms of the first Salesians, which, as we read from the memoirs, were very cold rooms in winter, so much so that the first Salesians had to break the ice from the basin that was outside their window, so they could wash themselves in their own rooms. Obviously, of those rooms there is almost nothing left. We only see some plaster, the floor which was originally slightly higher, and in fact, one can notice the difference in height that was recovered from this line, which was that of the base of the previous floor. Also very interesting is this section of the rose window of the bell tower that was cut in the construction of the building, because I remember that the bell tower was built the year after the Church of San Francesco. Church of San Francesco 1852, bell tower 1853. The old Pinardi house, which was much lower, only 2 floors, was demolished in 1856, and in 1856 this building was born, which is taller. The other half that had already been built in the previous 2 years and that cuts in half that section of the rose window is the same. In this floor of the attic, we have a project to build, or rather rebuild, in the second phase of the museum, a dormitory, so that some young people can spend a night in Don Bosco's house. In this room, a large dormitory that we will set up, a room for an assistant, service rooms, in this environment of the attic like the original dormers of the Pinardi house were.